The rain is already streaking the windows by the time Catherine Quinn refills the second decanter. 51 floors above Midtown Manhattan, the city glitters below like something a man like Vincent Gigante genuinely believes he built with his own hands, all amber light and black water, the kind of view that makes people feel permanent. Catherine keeps her back to it. She doesn't need to see the city. She's been looking at something else for 4 years. Before we start, make sure to hit like and subscribe, and really, I'm curious. Where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The office smells of aged scotch and cigar smoke and the particular kind of money that has forgotten it was ever anything other than clean. 5 of Vincent's lieutenants crowd the mahogany desk, laughing about something she stopped listening to 15 minutes ago. 3 separate stacks of bundled hundreds sit at the center of that desk like centerpieces at a very ugly wedding, not arranged as a display, just left there because there was nowhere else to put them. Catherine moves through all of it the way she always does. Steady. Soft-footed. She makes herself part of the furniture, because the furniture is never suspected of anything. Her linen shirt is plain. Her dark apron is tied at the waist. Her hair is pulled back in the way of someone who stopped caring about being looked at, or who learned, carefully and deliberately, that being overlooked was the most powerful thing she could be in a room like this one. The small ring on her right hand catches the lamplight once as she sets down the decanter. Her mother's ring. She straightens the tray. She keeps moving. At the head of the desk, Vincent Gigante holds his crystal glass of scotch like a man who has never once been handed something he didn't already feel he was owed. I know you're dying to see what happens next. If you're loving this suspense, check the pinned comment and the story description to support the channel. He is not a small man in any sense of the word. Late 40s. Built in the way of someone who has spent decades being the heaviest thing in every room he enters. His dark hair is slicked back from a face that has absorbed a great deal, violence, loyalty, loss, betrayal, without rearranging itself much in response. The tattoos that crawl up his neck and across the backs of his hands vanish beneath the sleeves of a black suit that cost more than most people in this city earn in 3 months. He wears it the way he wears everything, as though it is simply owed to him. His men love him the way that particular kind of man is always loved. Not with warmth, exactly. With the very specific devotion of people who understand that the alternative is considerably worse. Vincent reaches into his jacket. He produces a folded piece of paper, aged at the edges, handled so many times the creases have developed memory of their own. He holds it up the way a man holds up a joke whose punchline he already knows. Any of you geniuses figure this out yet? The table goes quiet in the specific way of men afraid to answer a question wrong. His consigliere shifts in his chair. 3 weeks he's had that letter. 3 weeks of forensic accountants, translation services, and 2 attorneys fluent in Italian, and the thing has not yielded a single sentence that makes sense in sequence. Vincent laughs. He waves the letter slowly, the way a man waves something he has already decided is beneath him. Then his eyes drift, past the lieutenants, past the desk, past the money, and land on Catherine Quinn standing at the bar cart with a decanter in her hand. He looks at her exactly the way he has looked at her every night for 4 years, not at all. Then he tosses it. The letter slides across the mahogany, past the bundled cash, past the pen, and comes to rest a few inches from her side of the table. Tell you what, sweetheart, if the cleaning lady can read it, I'll give her 10 million. Right off this desk. Cash. Go ahead. Impress me. The room erupts. One lieutenant slaps the table. Another nearly chokes on his drink. The sound bounces off the floor-to-ceiling glass and the rain and the city 51 floors below that has never once asked this man for permission, because it has never needed to. Catherine sets down her tray. She picks up the letter with both hands, steady, unhurried, the way she does everything in this room, and reads the first line. And stops breathing. Not from confusion. Not from fear. From something that has no clean name, the specific collision of grief and recognition that happens when the world hands you, after 17 years of searching, the exact thing you came to find. She knows this handwriting. The slant of the letters. The way the sevens are crossed with a single clean horizontal stroke. The way every capital R, there are 3 in the first 2 lines alone, curves just slightly to the left. Like a question still looking for its answer. She has known this handwriting since she was 6 years old, sitting at a kitchen table in Providence, Rhode Island, learning a secret language her father invented just for her. A game, he called it. A private language. The kind of secret, he told her, that only people who love each other know how to keep. The room is still laughing. Vincent Giganti watches her with the mild amusement of a man who has never once considered that the woman refilling his decanters might have a reason to be there beyond needing the income. And Catherine Quinn, for the first time in 4 years of steady, invisible, deliberate preparation, allows herself one slow breath. Because the letter is in her hands. And the man who killed her father just handed it to her himself. But to understand what she does next, to understand why her voice stays level and her hands don't shake and the expression on her face is not fear, you have to go back. Back to a Sunday morning in Providence, Rhode Island. A triple-decker on Atwells Avenue where the radiator hisses and the kitchen smells of coffee and toast. A sheet of paper on the table between a father and his daughter. And a man grinning like he'd just invented something the world had never seen. Because that is where this story actually begins. The memory arrives the way it always does, without asking permission. A Sunday morning. Atwells Avenue, Providence, Rhode Island. The kind of triple-decker house that settles and creaks in the cold like something alive, where the radiator hisses through the baseboard and the kitchen faces east, and by 8 o'clock the whole place smells of coffee and toast and whatever her mother has decided the day requires. Catherine is 9 years old. She is sitting across the kitchen table from her father, and Robert Quinn is grinning at her like he has just invented something the world has been waiting for. The sheet of paper between them is covered in his handwriting. Numbers and letters, Italian words she half recognizes from her grandmother's side, all of it arranged in a sequence that looks like nonsense until he shows her the key. Watch, he says. And then it isn't nonsense anymore. Robert Quinn was the kind of man who was very easy to underestimate and very difficult to forget. He grew up poor in Federal Hill, the real Federal Hill, the one before the restaurants moved in and the rents followed, in a household where waste was a moral failing and silence at the dinner table meant something was wrong. He was the first person in his family to attend university, on a scholarship to URI that he treated less like an achievement and more like a debt he intended to spend his life repaying. He majored in finance. He graduated without ceremony and went to work. By his mid-30s he had built a quiet reputation in financial restructuring, the kind of man that banks called when something complicated needed to be made clean. He was brilliant in the specific way that patient people are brilliant, not loudly, not urgently, but with the deep and unhurried precision of someone who has never once confused speed with intelligence. He was also deeply Catholic in the way that working-class Rhode Island men of his generation tended to be, not performativity, not politically, but in the bones. Quietly principled. Allergic to waste in all its forms. Loyal, sometimes past the point of wisdom, to the people he had decided deserved it. In 1997, Vincent Giganti found him. The offer was not complicated: come build something enormous, from the ground up, with resources no legitimate institution would ever extend. Robert Quinn was 41 years old. He said yes. Catherine has spent a long time not forgiving him for that, and a longer time understanding why he did it, and an even longer time arriving at the place where both things can be true simultaneously. The cipher was his apology before he knew he owed one. He invented it that Sunday morning as a game, their private language, he called it, built from two things Catherine already loved, the Italian phrases her grandmother used when English wasn't sufficient, and numbers, which her father had taught her to trust more than words because numbers, he said, didn't have moods. He mapped the substitution system onto things only the two of them would know: family birthdays, their home address on Atwells, the year her grandmother came through Ellis Island. "No one else will ever read this," he told her, smoothing the paper flat with the heel of his hand. "That's the point. Secrets kept between people who love each other are the strongest kind. The lock and the key are the same thing." Catherine memorized it in an afternoon. She was 9. She was always going to be good at this. There was one Sunday, later that same year, autumn, the kitchen darker by 5 o'clock, when a man came to the house that Catherine had not met before. She remembers him in pieces, the way children remember things that frighten them without knowing why. A dark coat. Hands that were very still. The way her father's smile went a degree tighter when he shook the man's hand, the specific tension of someone performing ease rather than feeling it. Her mother, Ellen, excused herself from the room within 2 minutes of his arrival and did not come back until she heard the front door close. Catherine stayed at the table. She watched. The man looked at her once, briefly, without interest, and then looked away. She remembers thinking that his eyes were the color of the sidewalk in November. She did not look away first. She did not know his name then. She would learn it later. That night, Robert Quinn sat at the edge of her bed and smoothed the blanket the way fathers do when they are buying themselves a moment to find the right words. He kissed her forehead. He turned off the lamp. At the door he paused, and this is the part Catherine has turned over in her mind so many times the edges have gone soft, and said, quietly, as though he were reminding himself as much as her. "Smart girls don't need to be loud, Katie. They just need to be ready." She was 15 the last time she heard his voice. She has been getting ready ever since. She is doing homework at the kitchen table when the phone rings. September 1998. A Tuesday evening, the light already going early the way it does in New England once summer decides it's finished. Catherine is 15, working through a geometry proof she doesn't need help with, half listening to her mother move through the house behind her, the small familiar sounds of a woman who fills silence with motion. The kettle. A cabinet. The soft drag of the back door checking the weather. Then the phone. Ellen Quinn answers it in the hallway. Catherine doesn't hear the words. She will spend a long time afterward trying to remember if she heard anything specific, a name, a sentence, a question, and she never can. What she hears is the sound her mother makes afterward. She has never heard that sound again in her life. She has never wanted to. The official story arrives in pieces over the following week, delivered by men in jackets who sit at the kitchen table with coffee they don't drink and notepads they barely use. A boating accident. Off the coast of Newport. Robert Quinn's vessel found adrift on a Wednesday morning by a commercial fishing crew. No body recovered. The Coast Guard opens a file. The file closes within 30 days. The detectives are polite, genuinely, almost elaborately polite, the kind of polite that functions as a door being gently but firmly shut. The paperwork is very clean. Catherine notices this. She is 15 years old and she notices that the paperwork is very clean, and she files that observation somewhere in the back of her mind where she keeps things she intends to return to. Her father hated boats. This is not a detail she has romanticized in the years since. It is simply true. Robert Quinn got seasick on the Block Island ferry. Every August, when the neighborhood loaded up and drove to Narragansett Beach, He sat on the sand with a book and a thermos of coffee and watched from a safe distance while everyone else went into the water. He thought jet skis were a form of self-harm. He once spent 45 minutes talking Catherine's cousin out of buying a kayak. She tells this to one of the detectives. A man with a patient face and a mechanical pencil he keeps clicking without writing anything down. He nods. He clicks the pencil. He does not write it down. She watches his hands the entire time. He does not write it down. Vincent Giganti attends the memorial service on a Saturday in October. Charcoal suit. A tie the color of a bruise, going quiet. His face arranged into the specific expression of a powerful man performing grief, solemn, measured, present in the way of someone who has calculated exactly how present to be. He moves through the reception at St. John's like a man who owns the room without needing to say so, which, Catherine will later understand, is because in every practical sense he does. He takes Ellen Quinn's hands in both of his and tells her that Robert was like a brother to him. That the family will want for nothing. That he intends to see to it personally. Ellen Quinn thanks him. Her voice is very small. Then he turns to Catherine. His grip is firm, not aggressive, simply definitive, the handshake of a man who has never once offered his hand without knowing exactly what it communicates. His eyes are the color she remembered from the kitchen that autumn evening a year ago. Flat. Patient. Containing nothing she is meant to see. I know you're dying to see what happens next. If you're loving this suspense, check the pinned comment and the story description to support the channel. She does not look away first. She is 15 years old and she does not look away first, and something passes across his face, too briefly to name, too briefly for anyone else in the room to catch, and then it is gone, and he releases her hand, and moves on to the next person. The bills stop being a problem. Quietly, without ceremony, the financial pressure that had begun gathering in the weeks after her father's disappearance simply eases. Ellen Quinn does not explain it in detail. She does not invite questions. She accepts what arrives and asks nothing about its origin, with the specific discipline of a woman who has decided that the cost of knowing is higher than the cost of not knowing. Catherine watches her mother shrink. Not all at once. Gradually, the way something shrinks when it is kept in too small a space for too long, Ellen Quinn becomes quieter, more careful, more grateful in the exhausting way of people who understand that their gratitude is also a form of compliance. She is not a stupid woman. She is a frightened one. There is a difference, and Catherine loves her enough to know it, and is young enough to be frustrated by it anyway. Catherine asks enough questions for both of them. She just stops asking them out loud. 2 years after the memorial service, on a January afternoon when her mother is at work and the house is hers alone, Catherine goes down to the basement. Her father's old filing cabinet stands against the far wall, 4 drawers, gray metal, the kind of industrial furniture that outlasts everything. She has looked in it before. Letters, tax documents, old utility receipts. Nothing that answers anything. She pulls the bottom drawer all the way out. She runs her hand along the underside of the drawer, the way she once watched her father do with a different cabinet in his office, on a day he didn't know she was in the doorway. Her fingers find the tape. Then the key. Small. Brass. No markings, no tag, no indication of what it opens or where it was made. She sits on the basement floor for a long time, turning it over in her palm. She doesn't know what it opens. She knows it matters. She puts it in her pocket and goes upstairs and never tells her mother she found it. Some secrets, her father once told her, are strongest when only one person knows how to keep them. The apartment has 4 pieces of furniture and no art on the walls. This is not an accident. Catherine is 29 years old, living in a studio in West Philadelphia that she chose for 3 specific reasons. The rent is low enough to be invisible on a budget, the landlord accepts a money order and doesn't ask questions, and the desk fits beneath the window that faces the street. She needs to see who comes and goes. Old habit. She has a lot of those. The desk is covered in documents, property transfer records, shell company filings, probate court decisions, civil litigation precedents going back to 1994. She has been reading case law the way other people read novels, hungrily, annotating the margins, returning to the same passages until she understands not just what they say but what they make possible. She works days as an administrative assistant at a mid-level property management firm in Center City. Unremarkable work, lease renewals, vendor invoices, the minor bureaucratic machinery of buildings changing hands. She chose it with the same deliberateness with which she has chosen everything in the last several years, because it teaches her, every single day, exactly how corporate assets are structured, transferred, obscured, and, when necessary, recovered. She is very good at her job. She has never once mentioned this to her supervisor. She is not building a career. She is building a case. She finds David Harlow through a law review article. He is a civil litigator in Philadelphia, mid-50s, unremarkable office on Chestnut Street, a specialty in fraudulent asset transfers and contested estate disputes. He has spent 30 years untangling the financial wreckage left behind when powerful people try to make ownership disappear. He has never represented anyone connected to organized crime. He has no reason to exist on Vincent Gigante's radar. This is the only reason Catherine calls him. She spends 18 months becoming his client in the most ordinary sense, small questions, plausible concerns, the kind of incremental trust building that looks like nothing from the outside and requires, from the inside, a patience that most people do not have. She is not most people. When she finally tells him everything, all of it, from Federal Hill to the filing cabinet to the brass key she has carried in her coat pocket for 12 years, he listens without interrupting. When she finishes, the office is quiet long enough that she can hear the traffic 4 floors below. Then he says, "If the documents your father filed are where you think they are, you already own it. We just have to prove you know." She has been waiting 17 years to hear a sentence that sounds like solid ground. She allows herself exactly 1 moment to feel it. Then she moves on. The key opens a safety deposit box at a Citizens Bank branch in Cranston, Rhode Island. She drives up on a Thursday in March, alone, and sits in the parking lot for 11 minutes before going inside. Not from nerves, she identified the bank 2 months ago, confirmed the box was still active under her father's name through a chain of inquiries she is confident cannot be traced, and has the documentation required to access it as next of kin. She sits in the parking lot for 11 minutes because she has learned, over many years, that the moments just before something irreversible are worth inhabiting fully. Inside the box, a single sealed envelope. Her name on the front in her father's handwriting. The same slant. The same left-leaning R. Inside the envelope, 1 index card. Not the letter. Not the cipher. Just coordinates, a precise, methodical set of instructions for finding the letter itself. Her father had hidden it inside Vincent Gigante's private safe in the Manhattan penthouse during his final weeks of access to that office. He had placed it there deliberately, knowing Vincent would eventually open it, knowing Vincent would never be able to read it, knowing that arrogance would eventually make him wave it around in front of someone. Knowing his daughter would find her way close enough to be in the room when he did. Robert Quinn had written the plan on an index card in 1998 and put it in a box and trusted that she would come. She sits in her car in the Citizens Bank parking lot in Cranston, Rhode Island, and does not cry. She made that decision a long time ago, that grief was something she was allowed to carry but not something she could afford to put down in the middle of the road. She starts the car. She drives back to Philadelphia. She cannot break into the safe. She has never entertained the idea. What she can do is research Vincent Gigante's household staff turnover, which she does over the following 3 months with the same quiet efficiency she brings to everything. She learns the name of the domestic staffing agency he has used for 11 years. She identifies the average tenure of housekeeping staff, 14 months, high turnover, low scrutiny. She notes that background checks are processed through a single firm in New Jersey that does not flag name changes predating 2005. She applies under her mother's maiden name, Catherine Dolan. She passes the background check. She is hired. She starts on a Monday in April. She notices the safe on her first day. It is built into the wall of the office behind a painting, a landscape, oils, expensive and generic, the kind of art that signals wealth without revealing taste. Exactly where the index card described. Exactly the right height. Exactly the right wall. She does not stop walking. She does not slow down. She does not look at it for more than the half-second it takes to confirm it is there. She keeps moving, steady, soft-footed, invisible, the way her father always said smart girls do. She has 4 years of patience left in her. She knows, because she counted. She arrives at 7. She leaves at 4. Every day for 4 years, with the exception of federal holidays and 2 personal days she took in the second year when her mother had a procedure and needed someone to drive her home from the hospital. She signed out both times, noted her hours correctly, and was back the following Monday at 6:58. The work is not complicated. It is simply relentless in the way of all domestic labor, the kind of effort that must be performed so seamlessly that its absence would be immediately felt and its presence never acknowledged. She cleans. She restocks. She arranges. She refills. She moves through the penthouse with the steady, unhurried efficiency of someone who has made peace with being part of the background, which she has, because the background is exactly where she needs to be. She listens without appearing to listen. She observes without appearing to see. She has been practicing both since she was 15 years old, sitting at a kitchen table in Providence while a man in a dark coat made the air feel different, and she has gotten very good at it. Nobody in that penthouse gives her a second look. This is the greatest professional achievement of her life, and she will never be able to tell anyone. What she assembles over 4 years is not evidence, not in the legal sense, not anything she could hand to Harlow or submit to a court. It is something more foundational than that, a complete and encyclopedic understanding of how Vincent Gigante's empire actually functions, from the inside out. She learns which legitimate businesses front which operations and at what layer of remove. She learns which attorneys are structural and which are cosmetic. She learns the hierarchy of trust among his lieutenants, who gets told what, at which level of a given decision, and whose name appears on which kind of paperwork. She learns the rhythms of the money, when it moves, how it moves, who signs, and who simply knows. She feeds none of this to anyone. It is not leverage. It is not a threat. It is context, the frame around the painting her father left behind the safe. Understanding Vincent's empire completely means understanding exactly what 40% of it represents, which means understanding exactly what her father built and exactly what was taken, and exactly how airtight the case has to be before she can afford to make it visible. She drinks coffee. She arranges flowers. She refills the decanters. She listens. Vincent Gigante is not cruel to his household staff. This is something people tend to find surprising when Catherine considers, in the abstract, how she would describe him to someone who had never been in a room with him. He does not intimidate the cleaners or threaten the kitchen staff or make the kind of scenes that lesser men make to remind subordinates of the distance between them. He simply does not register them as fully present. They are furniture, high quality, well-maintained furniture that he expects to function correctly and notices only when it doesn't. He has entire conversations in that penthouse, about money, about men, about decisions with consequences that would make a prosecutor's career, that he would never have in front of a peer or an attorney or anyone he considered genuinely capable of understanding what he was saying. He has these conversations freely and fully in front of Catherine because it does not occur to him, not once in 4 years, that the woman refilling the crystal decanter by the window is filing every word in a mind that has been specifically trained to retain exactly this kind of information. This is the arrogance her father predicted. He believes what he sees, Robert Quinn wrote on the index card, in a margin note so small she almost missed it. He sees a uniform. He will never look past it. This is exactly what she counted on. 3 weeks before the Thursday night gathering, Vincent opens the safe. Catherine is at the sideboard across the room, her back to him, arranging a vase of white flowers that were delivered that morning and need to be separated before the stems begin to crowd. She has her hands in the water and her eyes on the wall in front of her, and she keeps them both exactly where they are. She hears the painting move. The soft mechanical sound of the dial. The click of the tumblers finding their position, and then the heavier sound of the door. Then silence. Then a sound she has never heard Vincent Giganti make in 4 years, frustration. Low, private, the mutter of a man confronting something he cannot immediately resolve. Papers shuffling. A pause. More shuffling. She does not turn around. She adjusts a stem. She evens the arrangement. She keeps her breathing exactly as it has always been, steady, unremarkable, the respiration of a woman who is simply doing her job and thinking about nothing in particular. The safe closes. The painting returns to the wall. Vincent leaves the room. Catherine finishes the flowers. That evening she walks 6 blocks to a payphone on 8th Avenue. She has never once used her personal phone for anything connected to this, not in 4 years, not for a single call, and she dials David Harlow's office in Philadelphia. He answers on the second ring. He found it, she says. It won't be long before he shows someone. A pause. Then Harlow, the transfer motion is ready. Say the word. Not yet. She keeps her voice low, not from fear but from habit. He has to read it in front of witnesses first. He has to demonstrate he possesses it and cannot decode it. That's the whole thing. That's what makes it clean. Another pause, shorter this time. Harlow has been her attorney for long enough to know when she has already decided something. I'll keep it on my desk, he says. Keep it ready, she says. Not long now. She hangs up. She walks back toward the subway in the rain, collar turned up, unremarkable in every possible way, a woman heading home after a long day, carrying nothing anyone would want. Somewhere above her, 51 floors up, the lights of the penthouse are still on. Vincent Giganti is up there holding a letter he cannot read, written by the man he destroyed, growing more frustrated with it by the day. He has no idea that the author's daughter clocked out 40 minutes ago. He has no idea she has ever been anything other than part of the furniture. He never looked past the uniform. He never looked at all. You already know this room. The rain on the windows. The bundled cash on the mahogany desk. The cigar smoke and the scotch and the 5 men who fill the air with the particular noise of people who have never once had to worry about being overheard. You have seen it from the outside, from the vantage point of a woman moving through it like water moves through a space, finding every contour without disturbing any of it. Now you know what she was carrying when she walked in. Now the room is different. Vincent is in his element tonight in the specific way that only truly dangerous men can be, not performing dominance, simply occupying it, the way a very large thing occupies a very familiar space. He sits at the head of the desk with his jacket open and his glass in his right hand, and the ease of a man who has not felt threatened in so long that the concept has become theoretical to him. His lieutenants are loud. They are always loud when he is relaxed, because his relaxation is permission. They drink and argue and fill the room with the kind of laughter that has no humor in it, the laughter of men who are paid, among other things, to make their employer feel amusing. Catherine refills the decanter at the bar cart. She keeps her movements small and her eyes forward. Her hands are steady. They have been steady all evening, through 4 hours of this room and these men and the specific performance of invisibility that has been her entire professional life for the last 4 years. She knows what is in the safe. She has known for 4 years what is in the safe. She has been waiting 4 years for him to open it. Vincent reaches into his jacket and produces the letter. He has been doing this for 3 weeks now, taking it out, waving it, performing his frustration with it as though the letter's obstinacy is a personal affront rather than a design. He holds it up for the table. Any of you geniuses crack this yet? I know you're dying to see what happens next. If you're loving this suspense, check the pinned comment and the story description to support the channel. The room responds the way it always does, with the uncomfortable silence of men who have failed at something and would prefer not to revisit the specifics. His consigliere looks at the table. 2 of the others exchange a glance that communicates nothing useful. Vincent laughs. It is not a warm sound. He waves the letter in the air, this document that 3 weeks of professional scrutiny has failed to decode, that his best attorney called structurally impenetrable, that his consigliere described as possibly not even a real language, with the casual contempt of a man who has decided that if he cannot crack it, it probably isn't worth cracking. His eyes drift to the bar cart. To the woman at the bar cart. He looks at her the way he has always looked at her, which is to say barely, and briefly, and with a total absence of curiosity that is the purest expression of how little she has ever registered as a person to him. And then he tosses the letter across the desk. It slides past the cash, past the pen, past the other documents, and comes to rest at the edge nearest her side of the room. His arm is still extended. His eyes have already moved on, because he has already lost interest in his own joke before it has fully landed. Tell you what, sweetheart, if the cleaning lady can read it, I'll give her 10 million. Go ahead. Impress me. The room erupts. Catherine sets her tray on the bar cart. She picks up the letter with both hands. She begins to read. She moves through the cipher the way she has moved through everything for 17 years, steadily, without hurrying, with the deep and unhurried precision of a woman who has never once confused urgency with competence. The words her father built from their Sunday morning kitchen table game come back to her the way all truly learned things come back, not as memory but as instinct, as fluency, as the most natural thing in the world. She reads the first paragraph aloud. The laughter continues for approximately 4 more seconds. Then it begins, in different men at different rates, to die. She reads the second paragraph. One of the lieutenants, the one nearest the window, the one who has been loudest all evening, stops mid-sentence. His glass stays halfway to his mouth. He leans forward almost imperceptibly, the way people lean towards something they need to hear more clearly. She reads the third paragraph, account numbers, trust designations, the names of shell companies that Robert Quinn built and quietly restructured in the final months of his life, every one of them cross-referenced against a specific set of legal filings that a civil court in Philadelphia has been sitting on for 2 years, waiting. Somewhere in the third paragraph, Vincent Giganti's smirk dissolves. She watches it go in her peripheral vision. She does not look up. She keeps reading. Another lieutenant sets his glass down. The ice shifts. Nobody speaks. Then she reaches the passage her father wrote for her. She has known it was coming, She memorized the index card's coordinates well enough to know the structure of the letter, to know approximately where within it her father set down the cipher and simply spoke. She has been bracing for it for 3 paragraphs. It does not matter. Nothing she did to prepare matters. If you are reading this, my girl, then you found your way back. I always knew you would. Her voice catches. One beat, just one, just the length of a single pressed breath, and she feels the full weight of 17 years trying to move through that half-second all at once. The kitchen table. The radiator. The Sunday mornings. The sound her mother made in the hallway. The brass key in her coat pocket. The index card. The safe she has walked past 1,000 times without slowing down. She presses her lips together. She keeps reading. When she finishes, she sets the letter on the desk. She looks up. She meets Vincent Gigante's eyes for the first time in 4 years of working in his home, in his office, in the room where he has conducted the full business of his life without once registering her as someone worth looking at directly. She looks at him directly now. She lets him see that she is looking. I can read it because he wrote it for me. Robert Quinn was my father. And everything described in that letter, every account, every trust, every property, belongs to me. It has for 17 years. You just never knew what you were sitting on. The room is completely silent. Not the silence of men choosing not to speak. The silence of men who have forgotten, briefly and entirely, that speaking is an option. Somewhere to her left, a lieutenant's eye shifts in his glass, the small, indifferent sound of water doing what water does, indifferent to everything that has just happened in this room. Nobody moves. Nobody reaches for a drink. Nobody looks at Vincent, because looking at Vincent right now requires a courage that the Scotch has not quite supplied. Vincent Gigante stares at her. He stares at a woman he has seen 1,000 times, at the bar cart, at the sideboard, in the hallway, crossing the office with a tray or a vase or a folded stack of clean linens, and never once seen. Never once considered. Never once afforded the basic cognitive respect of wondering who she was when she left this room and went home. His jaw tightens. Something moves behind his eyes, not quite fear, not yet, but the immediate precursor to it, the specific and nauseating sensation of a man who has built his entire life on the certainty that he is always the most dangerous person in any room he enters, arriving at the sudden and irreversible understanding that tonight, in his own penthouse, surrounded by his own men, he is not. He has been sitting across from her for 4 years. She has been looking at him the entire time. The silence holds for a long moment. Then Vincent stands. He does it slowly, the way very large men stand when they are making a decision between 2 things, and the decision is not yet final, and they want everyone in the room to understand that the decision is theirs to make. His chair moves back without scraping. He is too controlled for scraping. He rises to his full height and sets his Scotch glass on the desk with a precision that is, in its own way, more frightening than any sound he could have made. Every person in the room watches him. Every person in the room except Catherine, who is watching the middle distance with the calm of someone who has already run this moment many times in her mind and arrived, each time, at the same conclusion about how to stand inside it. He does not threaten her. She knew he wouldn't, not immediately, not in front of 5 witnesses, not before he understands the full dimensions of what he is dealing with. Vincent Gigante has survived as long as he has precisely because he does not move until he knows what he is moving into. It is the same quality her father once described to her, in a different context, as the most dangerous thing about him. He comes around the side of the desk. Not toward her, not quite. He stops at the corner, close enough that a lesser person would feel the need to step back, and he looks at her with the flat, patient eyes she has known since she was 15 years old, standing in a receiving line at her father's memorial service. His voice, when it comes, is very quiet. Who else knows? Not a question. A topography, he is mapping the size of what he is dealing with, measuring its edges, looking for the place where it can still be contained. Catherine meets his eyes. Her voice is even. My attorneys filed the transfer motion this morning at 8 a.m. Eastern. The court has it. A beat. The clock is already running. Something moves through his face, controlled, almost invisible, but there. She has spent 4 years learning to read this room. She catches it. She reaches into the pocket of her apron. She places David Harlow's business card on the mahogany desk, directly beside the nearest stack of bundled hundreds, the two things sitting together with an incongruity that is not lost on anyone present. She smooths the card flat with 2 fingers, precisely, the way her father used to smooth a sheet of paper before beginning to write. One of the lieutenants, the one by the window, the one who leaned forward during the reading, reaches toward it. Vincent raises one hand. One hand, barely 6 inches, no drama. The lieutenant goes still as though a switch has been thrown. Nobody else moves. Vincent looks at the card. He does not touch it. Catherine picks up her tray. She walks to the elevator. She does not hurry. She has not hurried once in 4 years inside this penthouse, and she does not hurry now, because hurrying is what people do when they are afraid, and she made her decision about fear a long time ago on a basement floor in Providence with a brass key in her palm. Her steps are the same steps they have always been, steady, soft-footed, the walk of a woman who is simply finished with her shift and going home. She is aware of Vincent watching her cross the room. She is aware of every set of eyes in the space tracking her movement with the slightly stunned attention of men who are still catching up to what just happened. She presses the elevator button. The doors open immediately, as though the building itself has been waiting. She steps inside. She turns around, because you always turn around, because her father taught her that the most powerful thing a person can do when leaving a room is to leave it facing forward. She looks back at Vincent Giganti one final time. Not with triumph. She had imagined this moment many times over many years, and triumph was always what she expected to feel, the clean, bright satisfaction of a thing completed. What she actually feels is quieter than that and harder to name, the specific, exhausted release of a weight that has been carried so long the body has forgotten what it feels like to put it down. She lets him see it. She owes him nothing else. The doors close. Vincent stands in his office surrounded by 5 men who have never once, in all the years they have worked for him, seen him at a loss for what to do next. He picks up the letter from the desk. He reads it again, moving through the surface text, the cramped handwriting, the old Italian phrasing and the numerical sequences that his best people spent 3 weeks failing to crack. Without the cipher it is meaningless. Without the cipher it is just a dead man's handwriting on aged paper. He sets it down. He picks up his scotch. He does not drink it. He calls his attorney at 11:47 p.m. The man answers on the second ring. He always answers on the second ring. It is one of the reasons Vincent has kept him for 20 years. Vincent gives him the name on the business card. Reads it once, flatly, the way you read something you would prefer not to be reading. A pause on the other end of the line. Longer than pauses usually are with this particular attorney, who is not a man given to hesitation. Then, slowly, carefully, in the way of someone choosing words with the knowledge that the wrong ones will make the next several minutes significantly worse, Vincent. I know that name. He's good. Another pause. He's very good. Vincent hangs up. Outside, the rain still moves down the floor-to-ceiling windows in long, indifferent streaks. Below, 51 floors below, unreachable, unaware, and entirely indifferent to what has just occurred in this office, the city does what it has always done. It moves without asking his permission. It has always moved without asking his permission. Every night for 30 years he has stood at these windows and looked down at it and understood that his ownership of it was total and implied and permanent. Tonight, for the first time, that understanding is gone. The city looks exactly the same. Everything else is different. The first thing Vincent's legal team does is work through the night. 3 attorneys. A forensic accountant flown in from Boston on 3 hours' notice. 2 paralegals who will build a combined equivalent of a small car by morning. They spread across a conference table in a midtown office that costs more per square foot than most people's apartments, and they pull every filing connected to the shell companies Robert Quinn restructured in 1998, every incorporation document, every trust designation, every notarized transfer, every witness signature going back 26 years. They find them exactly where the letter said they would be. This is the part that takes the longest to process, not the existence of the documents, but their condition. They are not buried. They are not obscured. They are filed correctly, indexed properly, notarized by a licensed notary in Providence, Rhode Island, witnessed by 2 individuals whose names are verifiable and whose signatures are consistent across every document in the chain. Robert Quinn did not hide this paperwork. He placed it in precisely the locations where legitimate legal filings belong, knowing that the very legitimacy of those locations would make it invisible to a man who assumed that anything threatening to him would arrive looking like a threat. By 4 a.m, the forensic accountant stops typing. He looks at the lead attorney across the table. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't need to. The documents are airtight. Robert Quinn spent the last months of his life making them so. The associates begin to move by the second morning. 3 of Vincent's longest-standing financial associates, men who have structured deals alongside him for the better part of 2 decades, men whose own names appear on filings adjacent to the contested assets, make quiet, separate, uncoordinated decisions that nonetheless arrive at the same destination. They contact David Harlow's office. Not together. Not conspicuously. One by one, through their own attorneys, in language so carefully constructed it could pass for routine correspondence. They do not want to be attached to fraudulent asset claims. They have reviewed their own exposure. They have done the arithmetic. They provide supporting documentation voluntarily, records that corroborate the ownership chain Robert Quinn established, records they have been holding for years without understanding what they corroborated. Vincent's inner circle, which has held its shape through a great deal over 30 years, narrows overnight. He does not learn about the 3rd associate until the following afternoon. His attorney tells him in a voice kept deliberately neutral, the voice of a man delivering information he would prefer to be delivering to someone else. Vincent says nothing. He looks out the window of the conference room at the midtown skyline and says nothing for long enough that the attorney begins to wonder if he should repeat himself. He doesn't repeat himself. He waits. Keep going, Vincent says finally. So they keep going. By hour 61, there is nothing left to keep going with. Vincent's lead counsel, a man who has practiced for 31 years, who has found angles in situations that appeared entirely without them, who has never once sat across from a client and said the words he is about to say, sits down across from Vincent Gigante in the same midtown conference room and folds his hands on the table. He does not open with qualifications. He has decided, on the elevator ride up, that Vincent Gigante is owed the truth delivered cleanly, and that the cleaner it is delivered the better for everyone in the room. There is no angle here. Vincent is very still. The filings are legitimate. The notarization is clean. The witnesses are documented and available. The ownership chain is unbroken from 1998 to present. If this goes before a judge, a pause, brief, the pause of a man who has checked and rechecked and found the same answer every time, you lose. The conference room is very quiet. Vincent picks up his water glass. Sets it down. Does not drink. All of it? His attorney meets his eyes. 40%. Everything Quinn restructured. Yes. Catherine is in David Harlow's Philadelphia office for all of it. She arrived the morning after the penthouse and she has not gone back to her apartment since, not because she is hiding, but because there is work to do and she would rather be where the work is. She sits across from Harlow's desk with a legal pad and a coffee that she refills from the machine in the hallway every 90 minutes. She reviews documents. She answers questions. She does not check the news. When Harlow tells her about the first associate, she nods. When he tells her about the second, she nods again. When he tells her about the third, she is quiet for a moment. Then, my father built relationships the right way. Even the people who didn't know they were helping him were helping him. Harlow looks at her over his glasses for a moment. Then he writes something down. When he tells her that Vincent's team has reviewed every filing in the chain and found nothing, no error, no gap, no exploitable ambiguity, she sets down her coffee cup and looks at the window. Outside, Philadelphia is doing what it does in November, going about its business in the gray and unhurried way of a city that has seen a great deal and been impressed by very little. I know you're dying to see what happens next. If you're loving this suspense, check the pinned comment and the story description to support the channel. How are you feeling? Harlow asks. She thinks about it. She gives the question the genuine consideration it deserves, rather than answering it quickly the way she answers most things. Like I can finally exhale, she says. The settlement offer arrives at hour 71. Harlow's assistant brings it in without ceremony, a sealed envelope from Vincent's lead counsel, delivered by hand to the office on Chestnut Street at 9:43 in the evening. Harlow opens it, reads it in full, and then slides it across the desk toward Catherine without commentary, because he has been her attorney long enough to know she will want to read the primary document before she hears his analysis of it. She reads it carefully. All of it, every clause, every condition, every piece of careful legal language designed to make a capitulation look like a negotiation. A proposed transfer of the contested assets in exchange for her signature on a non-disclosure agreement and a full withdrawal from any further legal action against Vincent Giganti or his associated entities. She reads it twice. Then she pushes it back across the desk. No agreement. Full transfer. No silence clause. Harlow looks at her over his glasses. He won't like that. Catherine picks up her coffee cup. He hasn't liked much about the last 24 hours. She takes a sip. One more thing won't break him. Harlow looks at her for a moment longer. Then he picks up his pen. Then he reaches for the phone. 8 months later, it is over. Not with a verdict, there is no verdict, no courtroom, no gavel coming down on anything. It ends the way most things of this kind end, with paperwork and signatures, and the quiet, anticlimactic machinery of legal transfer moving assets from one name to another in language so precise and so bloodless that nothing in the documents themselves suggests the 17 years it took to get there. Catherine Quinn controls 40% of the assets Robert Quinn restructured and secured in her name in 1998. The number is large enough that David Harlow, when he said it aloud for the first time in his office on Chestnut Street, paused afterward as though waiting to see how it landed. It landed like a fact. Like something that had always been true, which it had. Vincent Giganti does not go to prison. This is not a surprise and it is not, exactly, a disappointment. Catherine made her peace with the limits of civil law a long time ago. In the same period she made her peace with a great many other things. What happens to him is in some ways more durable than prison. He is stripped of the financial infrastructure that made him untouchable, abandoned by associates who read the trajectory clearly and chose accordingly, and left to navigate an ongoing civil exposure that his remaining attorneys have told him, with the careful language of people who want to keep being paid, will not resolve quickly or cheaply. He is not untouchable anymore. He knows it. The people who need to know it. That is enough. It has to be enough, and it is. She liquidates everything. Every legitimate asset the transfer motion covered, the real estate holdings, the investment accounts, the holding companies Robert Quinn built and that Vincent Giganti sat on for 26 years without understanding what he was sitting on. She does it methodically, over 4 months, working with Harlow and 2 additional attorneys he brings in for the volume of it, and she does not keep a single dollar beyond what covers her legal costs. The majority goes to victims' advocacy organizations across Rhode Island, New York, and Massachusetts, specifically, organizations that serve families of people who disappeared without explanation, who were intimidated into silence, who received a phone call one evening and a polite detective with a clean notepad and nothing after that. She reviews each organization herself. She does not delegate this part. She establishes the Robert Quinn Foundation with what remains after the distributions, a small, deliberately unglamorous entity dedicated to funding legal representation for families of unsolved disappearances who cannot afford the kind of attorney that makes the difference between a case reopening and a case staying closed. She names Harlow to the board. She does not put her own name anywhere prominent. That is not what it is for. She keeps one asset long enough to sell it herself. The Manhattan penthouse sits empty for 6 weeks before she is ready to go back to it. She goes on a Tuesday morning in late September, alone, letting herself in with a key that still feels strange in her hand, a different kind of strange than the brass key from the Citizens Bank deposit box in Cranston, which she still carries, which she expects she always will. The penthouse without furniture is a different place entirely. Larger, somehow. The floor-to-ceiling windows are exactly the same and the city beyond them is exactly the same and the rain, because it is raining again, moves down the glass in exactly the same long and different streaks. She stands at the windows for a while. She thinks about all the evenings she moved through this room with a tray or a decanter or a vase of white flowers, steady and soft-footed, part of the furniture, invisible by design and necessity and the specific arrogance of a man who never looked past what he expected to see. She thinks about the safe behind the painting is gone now, sold with the rest of the contents, and the safe stands exposed in the wall, empty, its door hanging slightly open the way things do when they have been fully relieved of their purpose. She does not feel triumphant standing here. She has spent a long time anticipating what she would feel in this room when it was finally over, and none of what she anticipated is what she actually feels. What she feels is finished. Complete, in the way of something that has reached its last page, not jubilant, not relieved exactly, but done, in the deepest sense of the word. She takes one last look at the city. Then she closes the door behind her, and does not go back. The house on Atwells Avenue comes back to her in October. The family that has been renting it for the past decade is kind about the transition. They leave it clean, they take their things, they are gone by the 1st of the month. Catherine drives up from Philadelphia on a Saturday with 1 box of books and a coffee maker and nothing else she considers essential, because the things she considers essential have never fit in boxes. The radiator still hisses. The kitchen still faces east. The table is still there, the same table, the same 4 chairs, the same slight unevenness in the floor beneath it that she remembers from childhood as a thing that simply was, the way all the particular textures of a childhood home simply are, encoded into the body before the mind knows to record them. She sets the coffee maker on the counter. She puts the box of books against the wall. She stands in the kitchen for a long time, not doing anything, just being in the room where it started. On the day the sale of the penthouse closes, she sits down at the table. She takes out a sheet of paper. She takes out a pen, a good one, the kind her father preferred, the kind that requires actual intention to write with. She thinks for a moment, looking at the blank page the way he used to look at a blank page, with patience, with respect, as though the words deserve a moment to arrange themselves before being asked to appear. Then she writes. She writes for a long time. Long enough that the coffee goes cold and the light in the kitchen shifts from morning to the particular clear stillness of a November afternoon in Providence, the kind of light that has no interest in flattering anything and flatters everything anyway. She does not address the letter. She will not send it anywhere. There is nowhere to send it and no one waiting to receive it, and that is not, she has decided, the point. The point is the same point it was when her father sat at this table and invented a language only the two of them would ever speak, not to send, but to speak. Not to be heard, but to be finished. She writes until she is finished. Then she folds the paper the way her father always folded his letters, 3 times, precisely, each crease pressed sharp with the edge of her thumbnail, the paper made into something small and exact and permanent. She sets it on the table in front of her. Outside, Providence is doing what Providence always does in November, going gray and quiet and honest, the way of a place that has never seen the point of pretending the year is anything other than ending. The light is low. The street is still. Somewhere down Outwells Avenue a car passes and then the sound fades and there is nothing. She doesn't open the letter again. She doesn't need to. She knows what it says. She wrote it for the same reason her father wrote his, not to send, but to speak. Not to be heard by anyone else, but to be finished with the carrying of it. To set it down on the table where it started and leave it there, in the room where a man once sat across from his daughter on a Sunday morning and showed her that the strongest secrets are the ones kept between people who love each other. She kept it. She kept all of it, the cipher, the key, the patience, the grief, the 4 years of steady invisible work, the one slow breath she allowed herself when the letter landed in her hands. She kept all of it and she brought it here and now she is done. I found my way back, Dad. Just like you knew I would. The kitchen is warm. The coffee is hot. The table is exactly the same. And for the first time in 17 years, Catherine Quinn has nowhere left to be but here. Thanks for watching till the very end. If this story moved you, hit like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. I'll be dropping another unforgettable story tomorrow, so make sure you don't miss it.